Yo, peddlers, welcome back to the podcast. This is your host, Norbi, and I hope you enjoy this next episode. Guys, welcome to the Peddler Podcast. Thank you for joining me. It's a great honor on today's episode for listeners. We have Keith Stein and Marcos Del Pilar, the co-founders of the first ever Pro Padel League in the US. So I don't think you guys need an introduction further than that. You guys just had an historical event on Monday, which I was lucky enough to watch as well. So let's start directly with that. How was it from your side, the first draft that you guys made happen? How did you live that event?
For me, it was insane, but let's ask our commissioner, Marcos. How would you describe it?
I'm gonna take your words, and I would say insane as well. That was very time consuming, time demanding, energy demanding, but at the same time, that was extremely exciting, and we all had the feeling that we were making history, not only because of the opportunity for dozens of players to become part of this league, but also for making the sport of padel a little bit closer to the American industry, the American mentality, and the American feeling. Mm-hmm. So the main goal of the draft was we were trying to get attached, the sport of padel to the American understanding and the American philosophy, and I think that we accomplished the job.
Yeah. Okay. And did you guys? Did you expect it to go as smooth as it went, or did you guys? How did you guys manage the problem that may have come up?
Can I just mention one other thing before Marco should probably respond to that question? And the answer is pretty short. It went very, very smoothly. We're very, very pleased. But Marcos, you and I this all started with Marcos and myself. Yeah. And to go from where we were not too long ago to where we were on draft day, quite incredible. But Marcos, this is the one thing I never mentioned to you, and it just occurred to me the day after, actually, that what we did on Monday with the first draft of the Pro Padel League, the PPL, we had the world watching. How many times can you say you do something where the entire world, obviously not every single person on the planet, but we had probably 25 different countries represented? How often do you do something where the world is watching like that? It's quite extraordinary.
You're right, man. You're right. We receive, hundreds of messages, from all over the world saying, hey, we're watching, we're following you guys. Yeah. What an amazing job, and so on. So that was pretty exciting.
That's cool.
My only regret, and before we move on, I gotta say that we both, and the entire PPL team, we wish that we could have chosen, more players, and we could get, more people involved. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the PPL team is working really hard to make some space, for bringing more teams, more players, and maybe making bigger rosters for the future. Mm-hmm. So we'll be creating that opportunity for more players. In fact, that was my only regret.
Okay, that was gonna go into my next kind of question a little bit as well. I was watching, and I'm sure many people from the rest of the world was watching as well, and was a bit surprised to see that not every team took the opportunity to bring someone from outside of the US. That's obviously might be a team question. I might have to ask the teams on why is that, but what do you guys think on that?
Marcos, do you want to go first?
Yeah, basically the criteria for recruiting, players is coming from the owners, basically, and the teams that they are built. So the league is not involved in this, all the team owners have different criteria, different vision, and they made their own choices, based on their plans for the future. So that is not a question for us. That's probably a question for the owners.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. When we are talking about the Pro Padel League, the franchise model, right? It is obviously a well-known concept in the US, NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL, and so on. It is also known in Europe. I'm obviously based in Switzerland, so it's obviously known in Europe as well, because there is a very big football culture, soccer culture in Europe. So what I wanted to understand, and you guys have spoken a little bit about that in your previous podcast as well, but a little bit maybe more in detail on some of the hardships that you guys had to go through in terms of the sponsorships and getting sponsors, getting people involved, because of it's such a new sport. And how did you guys eventually come around that to be where you are at the moment?
It's a very interesting question. But Marcos and I had, I think, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here.
Mm-hmm.
And that opportunity was the opportunity to bring a brand new sport to a continent, to North America.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you get that sort of chance?
Not very often.
So and I don't think it will happen again, maybe for decades. I hope there are more sports emerging all the time, but it doesn't happen very often. And it certainly doesn't happen very often that you have the emergence of a new league. This league, the PPL, is very important to the sport, and that's Marcos's number one passion, and mine as well, because we think the PPL will be the most important catalyst for the imminent explosion of the sport in Canada, the USA, and Mexico. But you have to realize where we're coming from in North America. In the US, you only have a couple hundred courts.
Yeah.
Now that's gonna go from 0 to 60 really quickly.
Yeah.
You might have 30,000 courts in another 5 to 7 years, and millions and millions of people playing in the next couple of years. But when Marcos and I first began, we'd call people and explain this unique opportunity to own a franchise in the world's first league of its kind. And often the first question was, what is this sport? Now it's gone from that point where people didn't really understand the sport to now, fast forward to today, people are calling us every single day, sometimes several times a day. And Marcos and I are so busy trying to get ready for the broadcast of our league. It's going to be on one of the major networks in the US. It's going to be seen in over 200 million homes. There's so many exciting things happen. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time right now to speak to new owners. We will do that again after the season. We already have 7 franchises. As you know, we have 1 in Canada, we have 5 in the US, 1 in Mexico, which also makes us the first truly North American sports league in the world.
Yeah.
So that we're very proud of that. Now people, because I think of what we've done in part, there's all this buzz out there. Believe me, if they didn't know what the sport was all about 6 months ago, a lot more people know about it now because of what we've been doing. But also, we're only in this position to develop this league because Marcos has been working on the sport for a decade here in the United States and beyond to plant all the seeds. And now it's much easier for us because of the work he did in the past.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Well, as I usually do, Keith, I do really appreciate the compliment, but I'm gonna share the credit or give the credit, to incredible people that have been working in the country, for many years before I was coming here, and I wanna at least share the credit with them and wonderful investors that we have that are putting their money and their passion, on building, courts, facilities, bringing tournaments to the US and so on. So I think it's a team effort. We are planting our seeds in here and trying to help, trying to contribute as well. But we do also appreciate what everybody else is doing because this cannot be done, alone. The PPL is here to help, but we also appreciate and want to join with whoever is interested, in keep growing the sport of padel in North America.
Okay. Do you think this could have a global, how do you say, exposure or a global effect on the growth of the sport? Obviously, I'm myself and everybody else who is in paddle, I hope is in the same boat of looking to grow the sport, whether that's in the US, whether that's in Europe, whether that's in Asia, doesn't matter. Do you think that this Pro Paddle League could be an example and could have, the exposure and an example for the rest of the world as well to grow the sport and impact?
Marcos will have much more insightful comments, but let me just make this point. And I make this point as a Canadian, not an American, but the world we live in. And of course, the world is very global. But what happens in the United States and what becomes successful in the United States tends to have a dramatic impact and a ripple effect around the world. So the sport, of course, is doing well in many parts of the world. But when the PPL shines a spotlight on the sport in the United States, as well as Canada and Mexico, but when it really takes off in the United States, I think suddenly this becomes a global phenomenon. But I'd like to hear Marcos's thoughts.
Well, I would say, the answer is pretty simple because that's already happening, Norbert. So it's already happening, in the last few weeks. we are receiving interest, from all over the world, to be honest with you. We made the announcement of the San Diego Stingrays, getting Tommy Haas
Yeah.
as part of the ownership group. We have Juan Martín del Potro connected with Team Miami. We have Sebastian Jovinko connected with Team in Toronto. We have Gavin Malouf, and some others being part of the team in Vegas, and more things coming. So for the last few weeks, we've been receiving already, a lot of traction and a lot of interest, all over the world. So media being exposed in Germany, in the UK, in Europe, so many places in Europe, now the Middle East. The last few days, we're creating an enormous traction in the Middle East as well. And I obviously, what is happening in the US as well, all the media, CBS and some other, 8 News.
I've been following, yes.
Yeah, a lot of media coverage. So we really think that this is creating an impact, growing the exposure and love for the sport. So let's say from day one, we think that we are doing the job, and giving that push.
Okay. All right, cool. That's I think you guys are doing a great job, and I think it's recognized all over the world, or seen all over the world. And that's why I also asked, how come there hasn't been more outside of the US people picked? Because I think that's a personal opinion, to be honest. You can disagree with that, but I think the snowball that you guys have, and the number of international players would have kept that snowball going. It will keep going, obviously, but for example, if there was a Swiss guy on the team, or if there was a French guy on the team, those nations would have doubled down on the following of the league and of the following of that league. So that's why was, for me, the question at the beginning in regards to the more international players getting involved from the team's side of things.
But there's something I want you to appreciate, and we're not at liberty to share anything specifically right now.
Sure.
But our teams have the ability to sign up players as free agents. There are restrictions. Not every single member of their team, of course, can be a free agent, because it would defeat the purpose of having a draft. We have had a very successful draft. First, there have been many international players that have been signed by our teams, but I think in the days and weeks ahead, you're going to hear some very big news about well-respected, great international players who are coming to the PPL. But there's one other point I want you to keep in mind. You talked about, how will this league have a global reach and impact? The world needs, the sport needs North America to have its own homegrown players. Marcos always talks about creating an ecosystem for players here in the United States, Canada, and Mexico.
Sure.
The PPL will do that. So there are already great players in other parts of the world. There are great players in the US and Mexico, Canada also, but we need more great players.
Sure.
And I think that's an important mandate for the PPL.
Okay, cool. Let's get on.
I would add, I agree 100%. And I would add, that's part of the legacy, that the PPL has, from the very beginning, is building this new environment for North American players to showcase the game and to create, that attraction for they need to become the next generation of superheroes and superstars on Padel in the US, in order to get people excited and in order to make fans resonate with them and people to follow them.
For sure.
So of course, I have hundreds of friends, that play internationally. I'm very good friend of some of the best players in the world as well. But we also felt the responsibility of building this new ecosystem, as
makes sense.
For them to start signing as well. Because when we activate these new superstars, we'll also be activating, hundreds or thousands or millions of fans behind them. And we needed to push, the local stars as well somehow.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, because essentially you're making it for the US population. You want to grow the sport in the US. That's your main object, obviously, with potentially helping the whole world grow in the sport. So that definitely makes sense. And it starts at the grassroots levels in the US, as well as for us. I run a center here in Switzerland, and it's as well for us. The kids are extremely important. Having Swiss kids competing on the professional tour is, or will be, very important, and we're working towards that as well. So that makes a lot of sense to me as well. Actually, I was just curious to hear from you guys. So that's cool to understand. Let me jump on maybe 2 more questions if you can squeeze it in there, and then I'll let you guys go. What I wanted to understand the impact on the local communities where your league is based, right? Where the teams are based. What kind of impact are you hoping for? And how do you plan to achieve that?
Well, for one thing, we need more courts everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's going to be
Yeah.
there's going to be a great proliferation of courts, no question. But you know something, we expect all of our teams to have local facilities. So our teams themselves are going to be a catalyst for the construction of new courts, new facilities. So we're going to start the dominoes, and I think you're going to see really a great boom in court development because of our league, but not only because of our league. And there's going to be TV. America, Canada, they need more exposure to this sport. There's going to be local television in all of our franchise markets. There's going to be national television. So there's going to be a whole new audience that we're going to reach now because of the PPL.
Okay.
Keith, why don't you mention, now that you are addressing this topic, why don't you mention, the milestone that we achieved, in regard of broadcasting, television, and so on? Because I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think it is, Marcos, because I don't think this level of exposure or anything close to it has ever been achieved in North America before. But what we're going to start doing when our season begins in May, you're going to see all of our matches broadcast. And I touched on this earlier, but we're going to be in over 200 million homes every weekend for five weeks. And then actually beyond the 5 weeks, you'll see replays, and the TV product is going to, I think, be rebroadcast. I should also mention that we are creating a preview show for the PPL, and that preview show is going to start running in hundreds of millions of homes in April and early May. So the American public, Canadian, Mexican public, they are going to really be seeing a lot of the sport that they never have before. Yeah.
Okay. That's
really Keith, what about national TV? Do you want to mention anything else?
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Tell us about it. Tell us about it, please.
Yeah, we are going to be broadcasting our finals. We're very proud to announce on CBS television.
Okay. Wow.
Which you probably know is one of the big three networks in the United States, one of the biggest networks in the world. So we're very proud to be associated with CBS Sports and really excited about that.
Okay, that's awesome. And I mean, I don't know how much you can share on that as well, but how did you guys achieve that with the sport of paddle, with again, not so popular sport in the US, to have that kind of exposure through TV?
Hard work. Marcos and I have been working tirelessly for a while now. Every single day we're in attack mode. So it's hard work, but also I think when you have the kind of passion Marcos does for the sport and a proven track record, and they see my passion as well, people started to understand the vision and buy into it. And then as they, some people would have meetings with us, and at first they might not understand, but then they would go away and do a little research, and they'd realize this is, as I said before, a once-in-a-life opportunity. So it wasn't really hard. It wasn't really hard at the end of the day, as long as we presented people and got to the right people. So we got to the right people, which isn't always easy, but we got to the right people. And once we got to the right people and made them understand the potential and upside here, everyone started piling on.
All right. Good. Awesome. Let's leave the audience with an advice from both of you. I would love to understand that. Obviously, growing the sport is my main object and is our main object, I think. And I would love to have an advice from both of you on smaller countries who are, well, not smaller, not necessarily smaller in size, but smaller in paddle popularity, on achieving similar results that you guys have had. What would you say to those people if a country where it's not very popular come to you and say, hey, how do you guys do it? What do I need to do to achieve similar results that you guys did?
I'm going to go first because Marco should have the last word. But what I would say first, and I know it's a little bit corny, but dream big. That's what we did. We had a big dream, and it was a little tough in the early days, but we kept believing in our dream. The next thing is recognize what country you're in, especially if you're in a smaller country, because there's probably a greater opportunity. This sport is likely not as developed in certain smaller countries. So seize this opportunity. Opportunities like this do not come along very often, where you have a new sport which hasn't been saturated, which hasn't been attacked by thousands and thousands of people in your local market. To all those people out there who are living in a place where there's tons of room for development, be a Padel pioneer and jump on this thing and make your own dream work.
Okay. Marcos?
I would say, you know, something that I usually say in part of my conferences, which is D plus D, you know, dream big, as Kit said, plus D, that stands from determination.
Okay.
Dream big and determination. You gotta have, you know, a lot of determination, including, you know, consistency, never give up. You know, you gotta have a lot of passion for what you are doing. You know, you can settle down. You need to aspire to excellence every day, and all these things happening under the umbrella of good feelings, good emotions, and a lot of love. I think that I always repeat the same thing, but that is part of my legacy and part of the message that I want to spread through the world. I think we can make a better world through Padel, and you know we need to do that together with a lot of love, you know, and generosity.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta leverage on someone else's success as well.
Yeah.
We gotta help each other, and that is, you know, the rest is history, or the sky's the limit. You know, after that, when you get great people around, you know, a great team of people around, everything becomes easier. But let's say passion, determination, and as Kit said, you know, dreaming big is part of the equation, part of the formula.
I love that. I love that. Guys, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you taking time to share some details and information and experiences with me for the podcast and for the listeners. Yeah. I wish you guys all the best. I will be following. I think the whole world will be following. My followers will be following for sure. And yeah, let's catch up again soon.
Hey Norbert, before we conclude, can I just say two last things?
Of course.
Our sport, our courts have glass walls, but there's no glass ceiling, which means the sky's the limit with Padel. But the other thing I want to say is our league is very committed to the roots of this sport, and we like to pay homage to its origin. You know, the sport was invented in Mexico, and Mexico and Spain have been at the forefront of the development of the sport. So our league, the PPL, North America's first professional paddle league, has a slogan, and we always like to end by asking our friend Marcos to say,
"Vamos!"
Awesome. Perfect. Vamos, guys. I wish you guys all the best as well.